You've continued to show up with dwindled numbers. You've continued to do the right thing in helping people in need, and you have our support. To the families of the victims, we stand with you. We feel your pain, and you'll have an entire city that will wrap their arms around you to show the support and love. And to our Minneapolis community, we are strong. We are resilient. We have been through hard times before, and we find a way to rise above, and we will do that again. I want to thank a number of different agencies and jurisdictions that showed up during our moment of need. I want to thank the state of Minnesota, Governor Walz, the Department of Public Safety. I want to thank our Hennepin County Sheriff's Office and Sheriff Witt. I want to thank the City of St. Paul and all of the other agencies that have helped us through this very difficult night. We come together during hard times. That's what we do in Minnesota. And before I turn it over to Assistant Chief Blackwell, I want to ask each of you and members of the public and press to be patient with us as we do not know all of the facts yet. We want to make sure that the investigation is completed and that we're doing it the right way, that we're honoring both the victims and their families. And we got to do everything possible to make sure that these tragic events, in this epidemic of gun violence, this kind of stuff never happens again. And with that, I will turn it over to our Assistant Chief Blackwell.
Thanks for being patient with us. This has been a terrible day for our agency and in law enforcement. And it's happening all too frequently, and it affects so many. But today, MPD officers responded to a report of a double shooting on the 2200 block of Blaisdell Avenue South. When officers arrived, they received gunfire immediately, and they exchanged gunfire. 2 officers were injured, and they were immediately brought to HCMC. Officer Jamal Mitchell died at the hospital, despite all life-saving measures by Hennepin Healthcare. The second officer received non-life-threatening injuries. The suspect on scene was injured, and even though he was injured in that gunfire, officers still rendered first aid, and he was pronounced deceased at the scene. 2 additional adult victims with gunshot wounds were located on the scene. One was pronounced deceased on the scene, and the second victim was gravely injured. A firefighter was also injured during gunfire, and they received non-life-threatening injuries. BCA is investigating this incident. And to our fallen officer, Jamal Mitchell, he was a hero. I've never met an officer that received an award on the 3rd day on the job during his FTO. He's courageous in every action that he did. He was a wonderful human being. He had only been on our department about 1.5 years, and he was exceptional in every way. My condolences to his family and to his child. They're hurting tremendously, just like our officers right now. But I really want to thank every agency that responded. There were so many agencies that responded between fire, EMS, and law enforcement to help our officers on scene that was unfolding, and it was chaotic. And I want to thank them tremendously for all their help. And the Hennepin Healthcare, who did everything they could to save our officer. So thanks for your patience. More information will be coming out soon.
Thank you, Assistant Chief Blackwell, and deepest condolences to you and your officers, Mayor Fry and City Council. Most importantly, to the Mitchell family. There's no words you're going to hear today that are going to make today and the horror of it go away. For Minnesotans across the state, here in Minneapolis, but across the state, you're feeling the trauma of this once again. because this is one of those incidents should be unthinkable, but it's very thinkable because it's now happened 4 times in the last couple months where we've had public safety officers responding to the call that people make to 911, rushing into that situation, and in this case being ambushed, and a loss of life for Officer Mitchell. That trauma quickly should turn to anger and a commitment that this cannot happen. We do not have to live this way. We have got to commit together to do all we can. So Mayor Fry, to the City Council, the commitment of the state to provide anything we can in assistance to this. I too want to thank all those agencies today in a very chaotic situation. You'll hear a little more from Superintendent Evans. This is a very unfolding and fluid situation when you have this type of situation spreading over a couple of blocks. But all the folks who once again rushed into that, I thank the State Patrol who was there to help assist MPD, and then of course BCA will have crime scene investigators on the scene as we speak right now. But these press conferences cannot be the norm. The funerals we attend and the folks who were willing to serve at a time. This is a really hard job. It's a really hard job, and it's really hard with lots of guns on the street, and it's really hard if those folks can't feel us unified behind them to make sure that we're providing every single thing we can to make sure that they get what they need to do their job, to protect all of us, but to protect themselves. Their families deserve to know they're coming home. So deepest condolences and an absolute commitment that this cannot be the norm. With that, I would turn to Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, Drew Evans.
Well, thank you, Governor. And at the outset, I want to express my condolences to the Minneapolis Police Department, Assistant Chief Blackwell, and all the members of the City of Minneapolis Police Department. As the Chief noted and the Mayor noted, this is a terrible day. As the Governor noted, this is happening far too often in the state of Minnesota, and something definitely needs to change. What we had today is another police officer that was killed in line of duty, who was rushing towards danger, who answered a call for service, and the first thing he did when he got out of his car was try to help victims that were at a scene, and he was ambushed. And I'm seeing that far too often where individuals are doing that on a regular basis, where they're doing their jobs, and the first thing that they encounter is gunfire. And it's alarming, and it's scary, and once again, we're sitting here with a police department that's in incredible pain and a community that's in incredible pain. As Assistant Chief Blackwell noted, this call was originally a shooting call at an apartment. And as Officer Mitchell neared the scene, he located individuals that were injured and got out of his car. And as he was attempting to provide assistance to them, medical assistance, he was ambushed. With that, in the original apartment, 2 males were shot. We will be working in the coming days to provide you additional information about that particular incident. One was deceased at the scene. One was transported to the hospital, and as was noted, is in grave condition at this time. And we'll provide additional information on that in the days to come. Where Officer Mitchell was shot was about 1.5 blocks, 2 blocks away from the original calls area, and that's where he was shot by the subject at that time. And there was another person, an innocent bystander, we believe, that was shot as well at that location that is currently alive and in critical condition. There was also a firefighter, as noted, that was shot in that particular area as well. We will release the information about the actual subject that was involved in this. A second officer, I should note, arrived shortly after Officer Mitchell was injured and shot, and I exchanged gunfire with the subject at that time. He was injured in that gunfire exchange as well, and the subject is deceased at the scene in that location. As noted, we believe we know who the individual is. We believe this is isolated to the 2 different locations at that time. We believe that the individuals in the apartment had some level of acquaintance with each other, and I want to just caution everybody at the outset, we're in the very early stages of this investigation. I ask for your patience. We'll provide you a lot more information as we get it together. As noted, the Governor noted, we have crime scene investigators out at the different locations right now, and we have dozens of agents out working to meet with witnesses, canvass the area, gather additional information so we can provide you with the answers that I know you all want right now and into the coming days, and we'll provide additional information as we have it. With that, I would open up just to a few questions. As noted, we will provide the information on the officer in the coming days, as is a normal protocol with the work that we do, and we'll provide additional information on the deceased persons and the other people injured once we have confirmed all that, and we've had an opportunity to be able to speak with them, their families, and notify the appropriate people along the way. But we can open up for questions for anybody here.
Superintendent Evans, do you know what led to that original shooting?
No, that's still part of the real active investigation. We still have work to do that. We know that there's certainly some level of acquaintance amongst the people that were in the apartment, but we still need to uncover the motive, and really that's part of the active investigation.
Do we know how many Minneapolis police officers exchanged gunfire with the suspect?
At this time, we believe one, but we're in the very preliminary stages of the investigation. So we work through a very detailed process to uncover that as the work that we do. Right now, we believe it's just one.
And did the suspect fire upon Officer Mitchell from behind? Do we know?
It was part of the active investigation. What I can tell you is that Officer Mitchell was attempting to assist the individual that shot him. And with that, it happened very fast, and that he ambushed him. And it will provide much more detail on that. It'll make a lot more sense in the coming days as to exactly what happened. But I will tell you that there was a very close encounter and that he ambushed Officer Mitchell.
I did have a quick question. You mentioned ambush a couple of times. Was there a sense that these folks were lying in wait for the responding officer?
Yeah, I'm using the term for a reason. I've seen the video, and he was ambushed at the time by this individual that was there.
Do we know anything about the criminal history of the person who was suspected of firing gunshots at the officers and resulted in the deaths of the two people?
It would be, we know some very preliminary information about the person. As a standard protocol in these types of cases, we will work with the medical examiner, Hennepin County medical examiner, who will provide the official identification. We will provide additional information about what we know about him in the coming days.
Mr. Mayor, Deputy Chief here, I don't know if you can answer this here, but the next few days, this is obviously going to put a strain on city resources here. Have you talked to St. Paul and other cities around the area in terms of extending this assistance that they're lending to the city at the moment?
Yes, we've been in constant contact with a number of jurisdictions, including St. Paul, including the state, including Hennepin County Sheriff's Office, and they have all said that whatever is necessary to provide safety during this very difficult time, they're willing to provide, and it's deeply appreciated. I also want to note and thank our city council members for being here. It's a strong show of unity. To have the governor of the state of Minnesota here, city council members from Minneapolis, all standing side by side, saying that this kind of thing can never happen again.
Is it correct that this is the first Minneapolis police officer killed in more than 20 years?
Yeah, I'd have to double check with that. It has been a long time.
Last question. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
To a news conference at the city of Minneapolis. You see the governor there, Mayor Jacob Fry, Drew Evans with the BCA, the assistant police chief, Katie Blackwell, also speaking today. And what we've learned tonight is the identity of the officer who was killed. His name is Jamal Mitchell. And we actually did a story with Jamal Mitchell about a year ago. He was a couple of days on the job, and he rescued an elderly couple from a fire. And they called him, they said it was maybe the first time that anybody had been awarded a hero award on their first couple days on the job. But he is a son, a father, a fiance, and somebody who would run toward danger, they said.
We did get quite a few details that we did not know, other than obviously the identity of the officer Jamal Mitchell. We believe his age is 28, so he's still very young, only on the force, as you said, for 3 years now. But Assistant Chief Blackwell did bring us some information, as did Drew Evans with the BCA. And just to sort of clarify some of that things, some of the details that they gave us, Jamal Mitchell, Officer Mitchell, was responding to a shooting.
A double shooting, right? Somewhere
in that 22nd and Blaisdell area. He responded. When he responded, he was providing assistance to someone who was injured. that's when, as Drew Evans from the BCA described it, he was ambushed.
Yep.
And so we can be clear about that officer killed. Another officer was also shot with non-life-threatening injuries.
And that was the officer who exchanged gunfire with the suspect.
Correct. Again, the suspect is dead. A firefighter also injured, shot, non-life-threatening injuries. We also know that an innocent bystander was shot with grave injuries in the hospital right now. We don't know a lot about what occurred and who may have been killed or injured in that apartment, which initiated the initial call.
Yeah, we still need to get some, I mean, we still have some questions after this news conference because I think it's a little bit unclear just how many civilians may have been killed. We know that they were responding to a double shooting, and Drew Evans said that there were two people in the apartment who were shot. One was dead at the scene, one gravely injured, and it sounds like there were people also injured outside this apartment when they were responding with this initial call.
I think the most clarifying part of all of that was that Drew Evans with the BCA was said on multiple occasions that this police officer was ambushed.
Right.
Very frightening for those in the force, concerning for everyone involved in this, anybody who's watching this happen. This is sort of the biggest threat, as they described it to police officers these days, is that ambush effect. They make a call, they arrive at a scene, and they're ambushed. They're shot while they're responding to some sort of incident. It's alarming, and it certainly has a big impact, as the governor said, on those officers, those young officers, or those people who may be considering becoming an officer.
And in just the last couple of months, we've covered a number of these cases, the Burnsville case being the biggest, with 3 first responders killed and 1 injured. And then we've had other search warrants being executed where officers have been shot at and wounded. And this, as the governor said, keeps happening over and over, and he made it very clear tonight he wants officers' families he wants them to be able to come home to their families, and that we cannot continue to make this a regular occurrence with these press conferences and these funerals. But there are so many, as the governor said, so many guns that are just out on the street, and it has become an increasingly dangerous job.
So again, let's just back it up for a little bit here. Let our viewers know who may just be joining us or may join us during that press conference that this shooting occurred at about 5:20 this evening.
Right.
Officers, Minneapolis police officers, responding to a call of a shooting in that area just south of downtown, 22nd and Blaisdell. And when they arrived, they were then fired upon. One of the officers, the officer that was killed, Jamal Mitchell, was actually described as being ambushed.
Right. And they tried to get to him as quickly as possible, and they were executing life-saving. They were trying to save him, got him to the hospital where he died. And so just an incredibly traumatic and emotional day for all of these officers. Hundreds of officers have arrived at the scene. You have officers that then relieved Minneapolis police tonight so that Minneapolis police could go stand watch at the hospital as Jamal Mitchell's body was taken from the hospital and is now being taken to the medical examiner's office.
Let's go back downtown to HCMC now, where Courtney Godfrey has been standing by since shortly after this shooting occurred. Courtney, you watched the procession of many, many officers leave that area just a short time ago, just before this press conference, taking the body of Jamal Mitchell, Officer Mitchell, to Minnetonka, to the ME's office. Describe what that was like for us down there just really less than an hour ago.
Yeah, an incredibly moving scene, Randy. We saw the Minneapolis squad cars go first. We know that they were cleared from the scene and they were cleared of their duties downtown as mutual aid came in to assist so that they could be down here to be with their fallen brother. We also saw squad cars from all over the metro that showed up to escort that fallen hero to the medical examiner's office in Minnetonka. This area down here outside the emergency room has been closed down, cordoned off. It's finally reopened again as for safety concerns, and in order to assist with the procession, they had to close that area off. What we also saw down here today was a large showing of support from a few community members who just showed up and just wanted to be here and show these police officers that they care. I have a chaplain with me here who actually came down holding a sign that says "Back Our Blue." Why was it so important for you to stand on this corner as that procession went by and just show every single one of those police officers that you care?
I've been a chaplain for 4 departments over 15 years. So I know every time an officer has fallen, it impacts every officer. And so with everything we've gone through these last few years, a lot of them don't feel seen. There's a heart beneath that badge, and they deserve to go home to their families at the end of their watch.
Many would say there's an epidemic right now. Police officers are being killed. We saw in Burnsville, we saw 3 first responders killed just a short time ago. For you, you've worked with these departments. You know the officers that are underneath those badges. What is the answer here? How do we stop this?
Now is a time for grieving, but in light of what happened in Woodbury, we need to bring back the assault rifle ban. The governor's working on the straw gun purchases, but a lot of it's the drugs. Wherever there's drugs, there's guns.
And you came down here and you just wanted to show them that you support them. Thank you for being here and thank you for joining us tonight. Obviously, Minneapolis, we're having a extremely tense night here. Any law enforcement member will tell you that when they go to work every day, this is the day that their families dread, that they will get this call, that they will go, they will run in to danger like Officer Mitchell did, and that they will respond to the call and not come home. And what we saw here tonight was an incredible show of support for that officer. Randy, Kelsey.
All right, Courtney, indeed they did. Yeah, just really, really tough.
And
it's amazing to me that we keep seeing this time and time again, and then this outpouring of support for police departments and police officers time and time again, but it just keeps happening.
Yeah. And I also want to point out, Karen Scullen is the reporter who did this story with Jamal Mitchell when he did rescue that elderly couple in Minneapolis from that fire. And she told us earlier tonight that when she talked to him, and it was, again, like 3rd day on the job,
Yeah.
She said, "Why did you want to be a police officer?" And he said, "I want to save lives."
Yeah.
And they said in this news conference tonight that he was trying to help somebody in the street, and that's when he was ambushed.
Let's go back to the scene where this all unfolded at about 5:20 this evening. Rob Olson has been there since shortly after it happened. He joins us now live. Rob, we talked to you earlier about 45 minutes or so ago. It was still considered an active scene from the standpoint there were still a lot of officers there. What's it like now?
Well, fewer officers now, still a good number out here, but nowhere near what it was in the preceding hours to now. As you can see, still taped off for blocks around the area, the same perimeter that existed earlier, but a lot of the officers have left, the ambulances left. The road closed signs were now just put up. The police cars that are back here and a fire truck, many of those were part of that initial response, so that they remain then part of that scene investigation back here until they complete their investigation, complete all the documentation that they need to make of any evidence, shell casings, etc. Anything that was here at that time then must stay until all that documenting is complete by the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension here. But again, yeah, we see Rogers Police just coming by, saw Maple Grove too, helping out with this perimeter. Minneapolis Police, obviously a lot of them down at the hospital right now, going to the medical examiner's office. Been a long evening for them for sure. Let's show you though the video here of when, shortly after we first arrived, the massive scene here, not just geographically, but in the terms of the response of manpower. The number of police officers that were here is pretty much unlike anything that I have ever seen. A massive response, and clearly at that point, unclear to the responding officers if there was still an active threat going on at that point, because there was certainly a huge sense of urgency among the officers that were here, many of them in tactical gear. We saw the SWAT team here as well, a lot of weapons being carried around. So again, a lot of lack of clarity at what kind of threat did remain. We're going to show you a little bit of video here that somebody took of the latter part of the shooting, as this is after the one officer was shot, and then officers that were also here just turning up, responding, gunfire, taking shelter behind the fire truck that was part of the initial 911 response. Let's... Yeah, and those are the gunshots, the second round of of gunshots exchanged with the suspect here. Again, there'd been an initial shooting here. The person that took this, Corey is his name, said that he'd heard those first gunshots. The officer was down in the street. Then he started recording, and again, those officers that he saw hiding behind the fire truck and exchanging gunfire with the suspect. So initial volley of gunshots, a few, and then that volley of gunshots there is that continued, and that's when a firefighter and potentially another officer then were injured there. So that adds a little context to that, certainly clarifies more what we heard earlier about responding to initial 911 call of a shooting, finding victims outside, and then the officer was shot, and then more gunshots exchanged. And as they mentioned, as Drew Evans of the BCA mentioned, we'll get more clarity on that in the coming days about what preceded that, what led up to that 911 call. But now we have more clarity on what happened here when these officers responded and when this officer lost his life. That's it for now. We'll send it back to you.
Yeah, just when you think it can't get more tragic, you get the details as they come out and you see just how heroic Jamal Mitchell was. Officer